find out what worked and what did not, IEG conducted 16 case studies to assess World Bank Group's interventions in agribusiness, financial inclusion, and information and telecommunication. The results are overall positive. IEG found that IFC assistance, together with World Bank support, contributed to creating markets. Such assistance made markets more inclusive, competitive, and sustainable. Yet more efforts are needed to promote better diagnostics, improve access to the poor, and monitor risk capacity.
We saw a lot of innovation happening across the case studies, introducing of new products or new services, redesigning processes and making them more efficient, or using innovative financial products.
The study included 3 recommendations, all of which we take into consideration as we move forward implementing IFC 3.0. We have been strengthening our analytics at the country level through our country strategies and through our country private sector diagnostics. These enhanced diagnostics, as well as our sector deep dives, help us to better understand and articulate the challenges and solutions to unlocking creating markets opportunities at a country and a sector level. Creating markets is a means to improve conditions for the underserved, including the poor. Part of the challenge is actually measuring the impact of ultimate beneficiaries, but efforts are well underway to enhance our ability in this area. For example, we now use the SWIFT tool, the Survey of Well-Being via Instant and Frequent Tracking, a poverty assessment tool developed by the World Bank. Also, we are jointly implementing a grant for the Poverty and Equity GP to develop tools for estimating distributional impacts of IFC projects. IFC has developed specific instruments, such as the IDA PSW and other blended finance facilities, with this exact problem in mind. But even with continuous efforts and innovations, FCS IDA countries are, by definition, the most difficult markets in which we work and represent greater risk.
What's changing now, to your question? What has this evaluation changed and what's new with IFC 3.0? Number one, we're more strategic, way more strategic with our partners in terms of discussing things with them, in terms of wanting to reach a certain impact, not just a sustainable institution, not just some kind of return on investment, but for instance, market size, those kinds of things. And in terms of the opportunities, in other words, to focus our firepower to those markets where the opportunities are biggest. The other thing is we're more strategic. Another one is more coordinated within the World Bank Group. I'm part of an effort in Uzbekistan where we're working with FCI on building more inclusive finance. The AIM framework is helping us a lot because it forces us to be more strategic. We have presented a deep dive to the board strategy. We're working with CGAP. For instance, access to finance in Ghana has greatly improved through CGAP's work, and. And then the last one is, of course, better M&E. I'm just trying to put together the funding for a much deeper study, for instance, on these indirect effects of the institution building. So that is what's changing. More strategic, more coordinated, and hopefully more impactful in fewer markets, however. That is the downside of it. So it means there's probably a few markets where we're just going to say, no, we're not going to go there.
It's a way of coordinating our World Bank Group efforts to bring in resources towards development objectives, that's what the D is for in MFD, from everywhere, basically, and private sector included. So pure public investments, which I think most people easily understand in the context of the bank's traditional contribution, it's actually a level of the cascade, okay? It's a part of the cascade. And when you go up to the other levels, they're basically just questions about whether the private sector is or can contribute to that D in MFD, whatever it is, whatever development objective we're discussing with our government client, we need to be asking ourselves these questions. This is the implication of this creating markets focus about what the private sector is doing. If they're doing anything, no, then why not? the extent to which any diagnostic that we run can or should identify market-creating opportunities beyond the public sector reform agenda is effective the extent to which they're really getting the private sector to articulate that. And I think that that's something that has changed recently, getting that reality check.
How do we do this? And for us, that has involved two shifts. It's a shift from project financing to project development, and it's a shift from predominantly reactive to proactive, right? Because in order to do market creation, and Martin talked about this, in order to do market creation, rather than waiting for a sponsor to come to us and seek financing for a particular engagement, you need to be able to proactively assess what are the needs, the specific needs of the country. I want to emphasize the word specific. We need the level of specificity that is needed to identify what is the particular gap or barrier that exists to market creation is where we are at this point, because that's what is necessary.
Outside the institution, expectations are quite high. This will not surprise you. The world wants the World Bank Group to play a much bigger role in the billions to trillions agenda, the SDG finance agenda. The world expects it. Stakeholders and shareholders realize that these gaps are not being financed and that there has to be a larger role. And I think while high expectations are not always a blessing, in some ways it's fair that those expectations are high, because unique among all institutions, the multilateral development banks have the full range of tools to deal with all of the issues that we've just been discussing. No other institutions have project development facilities, technical assistance for governments and for the public sector, policy and institutional reform support, budget lending, project finance, debt, equity guarantees, and everything in between. Country diagnostic help. Only the multilaterals have that.